Hi, welcome back to the Math Social. Today we are going to practice finding the surface area and the volume of a cylinder. So a cylinder looks like this. So when we find the volume of this cylinder, we're actually going to figure out how much stuff you can fit inside of it. When we figure out the surface area of this cylinder, we're kind of figuring out how much material was used to actually make it. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is find the surface area of this cylinder. So first let me show you what a cylinder looks like when it's not all put together. One sec. Here is just a paper cylinder that I made, and I'm going to undo it so you can see what it looks like. So a cylinder is made up of one big long rectangle and then two circles. So if we want to find the area of this cylinder, we're going to have to figure out the area of these two circles, which are equal to each other, and then also the area of this big long rectangle. Let's do the circles first, but let's do it with this coffee can. When you're finding the area of a circle, the formula is pi r squared, and r stands for radius. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the radius of this circle. And I do that by measuring the distance from one end to the other, and I want it to go through the center point. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, so my diameter all the way through the circle is 6 inches. So my radius would just be halfway, which is 3 inches. So I'm going to figure out what pi times 3 squared is. Now I know 3 squared is 9, so I'm just going to figure out what pi times 9 is. One sec. Pi times 9 is 28.3. Now, if I didn't want to find out what the rounded answer is, I could also write this as 9 pi, okay? 3 times 3 is 9, and then I could just keep that pi there. Now remember, pi is the number 3.14, and it goes on and on and on forever. So sometimes, instead of multiplying these and rounding them, sometimes we just keep it 9 pi. Okay. So the other thing to remember is we have two circles. We have a top circle and a bottom circle. So I'm going to take this number here and this number here, and I'm going to multiply that by 2 since we have two circles. Okay, so 9 pi times 2, 9 times 2 is 18. So that's going to be 18 pi for both circles. And then I'm going to take 28.3 and multiply that by 2 also, which is 56.6. So this is the area in terms of pi, and this is the rounded area of both circles. The next thing I need to do is find the area of this piece that goes around my cylinder. And remember, this is just a rectangle, okay? So the first thing I'm going to want to figure out is the height, because when you figure out the area of a rectangle, it's just length times height. Okay, the height of my cylinder is 7.5 inches. So I'm just going to write that down. My height equals 7.5 inches. The next thing I need to do is figure out the length right here of my cylinder. Now, it's kind of hard to measure this with a ruler because it's rounded. So all the way around here would be equal to finding the circumference of the circle. The distance all the way around the circle is equal to this part of your rectangle. So, do you remember the formula for finding circumference of a circle? The formula for finding the circumference of a circle is pi times diameter. So if you remember, our radius was 3, so our diameter is 6. And 6 times pi is 6 pi, or our rounded version is 18.8, okay? So if I wanted to figure out the length and the height of this rectangle, I would want to do 8.8 times 7.5 or 6 pi times 7.5. I'm going to do both of those just so I can show you how it's written as a rounded answer and in terms of pi. So the first thing I'm going to do is take 18.8 and I'm going to multiply that by 7.5. That is equal to 141. So the area of our middle piece on this cylinder would be 141 inches squared. So I would take this area of both of my circles, 56.6, and I would add to it 141. And that is going to give me 197 inches squared. Don't forget, when we label the surface area, we are talking about square inches that would go all the way around this, kind of like wrapping paper. So I'm always going to label it with that little 2, which means squared. Okay, now I'm going to find the answer in terms of pi. So I'm going to take our height, which was 7.5, and I am going to multiply that by 6, okay? 7.5 times 6 is 45. Now, if I were going to find the rounded answer, I would take that 45 and multiply it by pi, because remember, my circumference or the distance right here on my rectangle was 6 pi. But if I want my answer in terms of pi, that means that you don't multiply by pi yet, okay? So I'm going to take that 45 and I'm going to write my answer as 45 pi. And then I am going to take that and I'm going to add it to my 18 pi, which was down here. So 45 pi plus 18 pi is going to give me 63 pi. Now, just to double check my answer, I should take 63 and multiply it by pi to see if it's close to this number, my rounded answer, okay? 63 times pi is 197.9. So it's very close to our rounded answer, okay? So that is how you find the surface area of a cylinder. You find the area of the top and bottom circle, and then you find the area of the middle part, which is just a rectangle, but you just have to remember the length here of your rectangle is the same as the distance around one of these circles. Okay, last step, let's just figure out what the volume is of this cylinder. So we would use that to figure out maybe how much coffee would fit inside of it. Here we go. When we figure out the volume of this cylinder, we are basically finding how many inch by inch cubes, so similar to this size, would fit inside of here. Now, many of my students have asked me before, well, these won't fit perfectly inside of something round because these are square and this has kind of a curved edge. Well, the answer that we're finding, we would be able to manipulate these cubes. So we would like shave off part of it and then add it in other places. It's not really seeing exactly how many of these cubes would fit. It's kind of seeing like how much of this size would fit in there. So we could totally like cut these in half, cut these in quarters. We would just make them fit any way we could, and we'd see how many would fill this up without any spaces. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to figure out the area of this bottom circle. And just like last time, we found out that our diameter was 6 all the way across this circle. So halfway across the circle would just be 3. Now remember, you find the area of a circle by going pi times radius squared. So pi times radius times radius. So if you remember, our radius is 3. So we're going to do pi times 3 squared, and that is going to give us 3 times 3 is 9. And usually we just don't write it in that order. We would write 9 pi instead. Now, really quickly, I'm going to figure out what 9 pi was again, and it's 28.3. So I'm going to write one answer rounded to the nearest tenth, and I'm also going to write one answer in terms of pi. Lots of times in school, your teacher's gonna want you to know how to do both ways. Okay, so we have 9 pi for our area of our circle, which is also 28.3, and I got that by just doing 9 times pi in my calculator. So 28.3 and 9 pi. The next thing I'm going to do is take both of these numbers and multiply it by my height. And if you remember, the height of this cylinder was 7.5 inches. So I'm going to take this and multiply it by 7.5, and I'm going to take this and multiply it by 7.5. 212.25. And we want to label our answer inches cubed, because we are figuring out how many cubes would go inside of this cylinder. Okay, for this one, I'm just going to take the number 9 and multiply that by 7.5. 9 times 7.5 is 67.5. And I can't forget, to find my final answer, I would also have to multiply by pi. So I'm going to put the pi right there, and that just means multiply when they're right next to each other. So my final answer for this one is going to be 67.5 pi, and I can't forget to label it the same way as my last one, inches cubed. So I hope that helps. Today we figured out how to find the surface area and the volume of a cylinder. If this made sense to you, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe below so you won't miss anything. Bye!